On today's show, I'm going to be sous videing these sweet pork chops. These guys are almost 2 inches thick, so woohoo, right? But I'm kind of excited because I'm going to be doing it in a Tuxton Home 9.8 quart fully clad stock pot that's specifically made for sous videing. So join me as I make my sous vide pork chops. If you watch a couple of my other videos on using a sous vide, you'll know that I use a variety of containers. I either used a big old pot to put a big old hunk of meat in there, or I used some plastic that was a little bit smaller so I could put smaller pieces in there. But what's kind of cool about using a stock pot or maybe a pot that's made specifically for a sous vide is that it takes a little bit of the uncertainty out. You know, you don't want your bags floating all over the place. Sometimes using the clips are kind of a pain. The sous vide immersion circulator itself can fall unless it has a good clamp on it. This pot takes care of a lot of that, and it's a cool pot too because it's fully clad, right? So what that kind of means is when you have a lid that has this nice little hole right there, you can go ahead and put the circulator in there like this. See, that fits in there really nice, and then bingo, I don't have to worry about sliding around and going up and down and getting the water levels all messed up. This thing has a rack, which you can go ahead and put in there, and then you can put your individual bags in there, and you don't have to worry about them, you know, I don't know, sliding around, sinking, and risking, you know, air, water, whatever bad stuff happening to it. It is fully clad. This thing is actually kind of heavy. If you feel it, it's got a little weight to it, and so that just means it's kind of insulated to a degree, so that way maybe your immersion circulator doesn't have to work as hard to keep and maintain the same temperature all the time. So that's kind of cool. It's a really pretty pot. If you look at it, it's all nice and shiny and stuff. It is fully clad, so you can see it's all nice and curved right there. There's no big old disc bottom on the bottom. It's got this tapered edge, so that just means when you go to pour it, it's a little easier for the liquid to come out and be controlled. So they put a lot of thought behind making it, and it's just a nice pot on its own. But it is a regular stock pot, so you can put this lid on there and then do what you got to do, right? So, and it's got the glass so you can actually see what's in there. You know, it is dishwasher safe. The lid is top rack dishwasher safe, so it's pretty good. So we've used it, we like it, and obviously we want to share it with you guys. So I just want to go ahead and thank Tuxton Home for providing this to us so that way we could use it on this show. I think it's great. It's a 9.8 quart stock pot. Amy will have the links in the description in case you want to take a look at it. So let's get to cooking the pork chops. All right. First step among others is having your meat ready, right? And then getting it into the sous vide, which usually means you get to put it into some sort of a bag, whether you're going to vacuum seal it or use displacement method, which I'm about to show you. Just to give you a little idea, this is a pork chop, one of the three that I'm going to be doing today. These things are kind of big here. What I do is I used compound butter. So I just basically took some butter, softened it. I didn't melt it, but I just made it soft, so room temperature or in the microwave for a little bit of time. And then just take your favorite herbs, dry, fresh, whatever you want, stir them in. And in this case, I coated it on here. Pork chops, you can use all kinds of different spices on it. So it's really, or if you want to use a rub, anything you want, put it on there and then let it rip, right? So I'm going with this today. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and throw this into a Ziploc bag here. And with this method, you get it where it's mostly sealed, and then you just kind of get this thing where it's underwater without getting it totally underwater, if you know what I mean. Don't want the sealed underwater. And that way, we got the bulk of the air out. As you can see, that looks pretty good. So that's just one. I'm going to go ahead and get the other two going real quick. All right, now for some of the fun part here. We're going to go ahead and put this rack in. Now, if you're doing something that's reasonably thin, these racks look like they're about 1.25 inches apart. Slide them right in, right? So since these guys are about 2 inches thick, just under that, we'll see if they stretch a little bit. What's cool about these things is they should be able to hold the bags up well under the water level and not allow us to have problems, right? So one of the risks you have, of course, is when you're dealing with bones, and these are bone-in pork chops, is you could rupture the bag, and then that just makes a mess and it really ruins everything. So you just have to be careful. These are thick, freezer-grade Ziploc bags, so they should be able to handle it. All right, so two in the rack. This one here went right on the side. Got the lid on there. Let's go ahead and put the immersion circulator in. It fits right in there. You can go ahead and get plugged in here. So we have the Anova immersion circulator in there. I have it set for 140. My goal is to cook this for 1 hour and 15 minutes. There's a little thumb wheel on this particular immersion circulator that you control the temperature pretty easy. The time, I'm not 100% sure. There is a little clock there.
I set it.
I usually have my wife set it on her phone because she's got an app and it takes care of it.
For 1 hour and 15 minutes.
So there you have it. It is set for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and sounds like it's working to me. So you can see the temperature's rising right now. It'll take however long it takes, maybe 15, 20 minutes, whatever it takes. It'll come up to the 140 and then it'll start to count down just like any other unit does. So what's cool about this pot is just how this thing works, right? I mean, this thing fits right in there. We don't have to worry about clamps that can slide up and down or go cattywampus. If you're using relatively thin cuts of meat, it fits right into those racks right there. Even with the thicker cut, you can still get a little bit in there. But it's a lot easier than some of these things where you got to really play with different clips to hold your bag to make sure it doesn't fly away, sink, whatever. So far I like this. I've used it a few times and I think it's really great. And I just want you guys to be able to see this. One kind of cool thing about this is if you need to take the lid off to do something, whether you need to adjust your food, take a temperature, whatever you want to do with it, but you don't want to play with the immersion circulator, is this allows you to just basically spin the lid, so to speak, and it rests right on the handle. And now I can get in there, I can do stuff. Meanwhile, this thing is still doing its job heating up. So that's kind of cool. I've used other stuff and it's just, it's not as convenient. So this is kind of cool. And we'll be back when this is done cooking. All right, this thing's beeping at me. That tells me it's done. So I don't know, stop. Hey, let's go ahead and unplug it now. So this thing's been cooking for, 1 hour plus 15 minutes that I asked for, plus maybe 10 to 15 minutes for it to come up to temperature. Pork chops, if you cook them at 140 for roughly 1 hour minimum, you'll get like a medium rare. It'll be pink, it'll be flavorful, juicy, all the good stuff. You can cook at higher temperature, but then you run the risk of, slowly drying it out. You can cook it longer than 1 hour, but then it'll get tender. It might fall apart on you, but basically the texture might change on you a little bit. But it's not nearly as drastic as frying it for 5 minutes and oh my gosh, you didn't pay attention, now you fried it for 10 minutes and now you just dried it out and killed it. Sous vide is way more forgiving. But 1 hour, maybe plus a little bit, is good. You're not going to hurt anything. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy out of here and then we'll get to more fun. And then this thing is still pretty hot. So let's go ahead, Hold this. So it's right about 139. It'll probably come up to 140 if I hold there for another several seconds. So it's pretty close. So we said we want to cook at 140. It basically did it. Yay. But you can see the color is not all exciting. So we can get this guy out. So this Rex did a pretty good job of holding the meat in. Didn't rupture, which is good. And look at this third guy out here. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and get these guys all patted dry, paper towel, napkin, whatever works for you. And then we need to do a hot sear in a pan to get some browning, which will help with flavor and color. So that's next. All right, we're getting ready to put some oil here. We got this all dried off like we said we were. This thing's already high temperature. I'm using some grapeseed oil. I'm gonna throw a little bit of butter in here before it smokes here. All right. You gotta be careful. When people say high temperature, they mean it, but you also gotta use common sense. You gotta know what your smoke point is on your oil. So we're only gonna be cooking this stuff maybe, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds each side. Take a quick look. Let's see here. He's got a little bit char going. Got him going there. Let's flip him. And then what you can also do here, I'm going to flip it back over, just take another quick look. If you have any herbs on here, be careful. You know what you can and can't do with them. Like if you have a garlic, that's not a good idea because garlic can burn pretty easy. Let's see, we're going to, let's see. Probably as much as I want to let go there. I'm going to throw a little more oil in here. A little more butter. Try to brown them like on the sides to get a little color. Have enough oil there. Let's look at the pork chops. Do those look like really pretty? Oh yeah. So we're gonna hold these guys to the second here, and we're gonna make a quick gravy here. So we got the pan on kind of like a low. We have some butter in there. I'm gonna put a couple of, oh no, I want a bunch. Do that for starters. Luckily for me, I saved the juices. When we, from the sous vide. Let's go ahead and add a little pepper here. Got a little thyme. Probably turn that down. We got a cup of broth. All right, we added a couple of cups of, in this case, chicken broth we were using to kind of thin this out. So it still has quite a strong pork chop flavor, or more or less pork, should I say. So I think it actually tastes pretty good. I think my better recipe for actually making gravy was when I did the smothered pork chops. And we can put a link to that below. This was just pretty much to make some gravy to put over the pork chops and over a potato I'm going to have ready. I had all that liquid from the pork chops. I wanted to put that to use. Otherwise, when you're doing the sear, assuming you're doing the pan, you can always make some sort of a sauce, you know, and then you can pour that over your pork chops. Or you can sear it on a grill. You know, that's a couple of different ways you can go ahead and finish off your pork chop. So this has definitely come to a boil. It's thickening, and we're going to have some gravy in just a moment. All right, the fun part is here. We got the pork chop is all cooked. We have a potato. I got this wonderful gravy over here. I'm going to go ahead and get some gravy on my potato here. I'll show a little restraint, right? So to me, that just looks great. So let's take a taste. All right, now the good part, time for eating. I do want to say thank you to Tuxton Home for providing this pot. This is a really beautiful pot. It's tri-ply, it's beautiful, it's heavy. It's useful for many things, so we're really happy to have it. It did a really great job with the sous vide holding it and everything, so that was great. So thank you guys. As for the meat, well, it's time to eat, right? First of all, this meat is thick, it's huge. I don't eat pork chops very often, but when I do, I get thick ones, right? And it can be a pain sometimes to cook them, to get them just right, where the sous vide method takes a lot of that guesswork out. So I'm really happy to try this stuff. And of course we have a potato and gravy, so that's all good, right? So let's go ahead and take a bite here. So. The pork chop, it's really flavorful because, you know, we cooked it with different herbs during actual cooking when it was in the bag. You get the immediate, I don't know, it's like pork taste, a little bit of what's on the top, and then as it goes down, it finishes us with more flavor. So it's really good. So I know it's kind of hard to describe, but a lot of times when you eat stuff, you have an initial taste, and then you have another taste. And let's go ahead and just put that in my mouth here. So it's flavorful, it's tender. One thing with sous vide is if you overcook it, it's going to get more tender, although you run the risk of slightly drying it out. So that will hopefully answer people saying, well, why don't I just cook it for a day or two or three or four? You only cook it for a certain recommended time. So that actually tastes pretty good. Like I said, it's just great. That's all I can really say. You obviously don't need anything this thick. That's just me going to a club store and that's just what they had. This is a bone-in. Bones provide really good flavor, especially sous vide. Let's go ahead and have some potatoes here. Gravy is really good. We got the drippings from the actual pork itself, butter of course, spices. I did use a little bit of chicken broth to thin it out because I put like way too much flour, but I also want to make a lot of gravy. So gravy is just one of those things, right? You make as much as you want. So this actually has a lot of flavor, so I definitely give it my thumbs up. Amy will have a link in the description for the Tuxton Home pot that we have here. So if you want to check it out, you can. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and a like, subscribe, and go to our website at amylearnstocook.com. We're also on Pinterest and Twitter at Amy Learns to Cook. And we're also on Instagram at Cookin' with Amy.